Hey, good morning, everybody. We get together on Tuesdays to talk about channel creation or content creation, I guess, and running channels of different types. Today, we're talking cracking the code, 10 secrets to boost your channel. Oftentimes, people with smaller channels think they don't have any skin in the game when probably don't realize your potential and your power, your influence out there. We're going to focus on that a little bit. We've got Clover joining us from Texas. Thanks for jumping in.
Hey, good to be here.
And we have some stuff. So I guess there was a presentation last week that Clover told me about. I think we both watched it, not together, but at some point during the week, and pulled some of the kernels from there, and then of course threw them into the robot to get them worked out, and that's what the text of this thing is. So we can use that as a loose structure, I suppose, to chat today. This is a live conversation, so we encourage the people that are joining us live to be part of it. And you've had a chance. I set this thing up yesterday. I think you had a chance. Clover had a chance to check it out a little bit. I think. What is your first impressions of this one?
It's pretty solid as far as the points or whatever in there, I think.
So I guess I was inspired, or the talking points for today came from that chat that you told me about last Tuesday. So did you watch the whole thing ever, or did you just watch chunks of it?
I still haven't caught up on it. No.
So then, what was your takeaways from it? I guess.
Well, at the point that I watched and at the point I bailed on it, they were trying to sell me the $1,500 whatever course. So
Well, yeah, but
that's
they
why
didn't do that till three-quarters of the way through or something.
that's well, maybe I come in late, like I don't remember, but I remember I came in, I stuck around for 10 or 15 minutes, and if you have ever jumped in any of those before, where they're whatever you call those types of presentations where people do that, people do them in uh, hotel conference rooms and stuff all the time. How to quit smoking or this, that, or the other. Um, and it just, I mean, it had the same feel, same vibe. Like I've heard that half a dozen times before. So I was gone. But yeah, after talking with you, you were like, oh, before that or after that or whatever, right? Um, so
Well, essentially, it's a channel that's a coaching channel and a channel that's what has this like group, I guess, like many, I guess, a couple of different groups, and then depending on your interests or something, you join one of these, and then you've got collaborators and you've got people to learn from and with, right? So that's the people who presented it, and then they did a presentation about, well, what was the title of it?
you're asking me. I don't even remember. That's been too many days ago.
Yeah, it was something to the effect of building your channel or using your channel effectively or something like that, right?
It had something to do with affiliate marketing, or it had something to do with revenue, or long term
Oh, really?
strategy. Yeah, I don't remember. It was something along those lines, but I don't remember. I could probably pull it up and
Okay.
find it.
Well, I mean, definitely, it's presented by a channel that's out there to help other people who are creating content, not necessarily, hey, let's just talk about whatever our topic is.
Hmm.
Instead, the topic is talking about topics or how to get better at it or challenge, accomplishing or what am I trying to say, like
Right.
fixing the things that are broken in your system or helping you with the things that you need help with, type of thing. So bringing people together to learn from each other and that kind of thing, and
Right.
essentially just talking about a bunch of success stories. He talked about some their strategy, which they have a system, and that system is effectively think about it beforehand, come up with some kind of a plan, work towards that plan, and then evaluate, and then repeat. And the evaluate is kind of the repeat section there. Like do
So,
something, look at it, do something, look at it, strategize, look at it, do something. So essentially, they were going through that circle, and a lot of it is just reflex. Okay, create content. Well, it's an easy to
yeah.
say, but it takes a whole other thing. But in this realm, create content is just one key, and then get feedback. Well, again, that's complicated, but just in general, he was saying that there's no magic, there's no secrets. In fact, here's our general outline. It's pretty basic and pretty much what everybody does, but it's the
Yeah.
nuance or whatever. The secrets are in the how you apply it to your situation or what you learn from the things that you dealt with. So anyway, there was a lot of
Yeah.
general big picture, and I like their concept. So essentially, what the concept was, or essentially what their point of view or their like mindset is think of it as a process and not as a guess or like a just practice doing whatever. Practicing poorly is ensuring inconsistency or whatever those words are.
Yeah.
The Marines have lots of little sayings for that kind of stuff. So essentially, it's kind of that kind of thing. And once they explain their concept, they use some success stories to show examples of people that have, been successful at it. So I can understand where if you've seen it a few times, where if it gets repetitive, where the cues that okay, now it's just going to be wrapping up or whatever. But essentially, it was like 2 hours long or something. So if it was like that, the arc was long enough that and I hadn't seen it before, that it wasn't bothering me or nothing. It wasn't like I was wading through some kind of sales
Right.
pitch.
Yeah. You're
It
fairly
really,
new. That's the thing. You're fairly new. Not new at YouTube, obviously, but I think you're fairly new at paying attention to the larger YouTube guru space, whereas I've been
yeah.
plugged into that world, and that for 6 years now or something. So, just real quick, the title of that was "Learn How to Create a 24/7 Cash Flow, Even If You Have a Small Channel." That's the
Okay.
title of
Thanks.
that. What they called their
So in other words, you don't need to
class.
have the elements of success that somebody else might put on you or what
Yeah,
you thought as a child was, things of success. Instead,
yeah,
practically in 2023, look what you got and capitalize on it. Don't
hmm
just go, oh, well, it would be nicer if I had a bigger, or, it'd be easier if I had a faster, instead work with what you got and work.
yeah.
And it's possible to do that with a lemonade stand, and it's possible to do that with a multi-billion-dollar company, and that everything in between. So
Well,
you
I
don't have
agree.
to.
I agree that it's possible. That the problem that I have with the vast majority of major gurus, and don't get me wrong, I'm not crapping on them. I told the vast majority of them, I think I'm not crapping. There's a few that are grifters. There's no doubt, but the vast majority, I mean, they genuinely want to help. The problem is that they don't practice what they preach. And there's a certain amount of hypocrisy that goes into that with me, and I think that creates limitations on certain segments of creators. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is they will tell you niche down, niche down, niche down, and they cast such a deep, wide, broad net. They're not niching down, and most of their stuff is vanilla. Even if you pay for their programs and stuff, for the most part, it's vanilla. They don't understand, especially in the firearm space. I can tell you this without a doubt. And there's also a couple of other niches out there that they're not educated enough. They don't have people in their teams that can help you navigate those specific areas, um, proportionate
And we're
to
talking like terms
their
of service issues
coursework.
where they
We're
put
talking
guns
about
under violence and
We're
issues like
talking
that.
about the navigating out. They don't understand the algorithm issues we face. They don't understand potential problematic keyword issues we face. They don't understand policy issues we face. They don't understand all the nuances in that, right? And so that
And that
becomes a
would
problem.
apply to
They
other
get,
niches where you got like beer
yeah.
making or something, or some other niche that probably we don't realize is
Well,
jumping lines or
so
causing confusion.
yeah, so a couple of other niches like sex ed or medical related, like
Mhm.
they don't get that very good. LGBTQ, they don't get very good. Anything having to do with weed, uh,
Mhm.
they don't get very good. I mean, anything that's problematic. If you're not doing vanilla, well, I'm doing a travel blog, or I'm doing a cooking channel, or I'm doing a drawing artsy channel, or I'm doing a gaming channel. If you're not doing those things, like they're lost. Like they cannot take their tips and apply that to your specific situation in a way that's not going to get you in trouble. Put to you that way.
All right. Well, I'm going to put it this way then. You can have a cookbook that's written by somebody who's got their life experience and their interests, but you read the cookbook and it tells you how to bake a cake and how to make French toast and how to cook an egg or something. You got no interest in cooking their style, but you can still get something from how they cook an egg or how they fry their toast or whatever they're doing.
Mhm.
where you not want to make their product, but you can watch their
Oh, I
process.
get it.
I
I
gotcha.
hear you. I hear you. You can extrapolate and figure it out. But I'm not paying them $1,500 for a course that I've got to figure a bunch of crap out. Like I already know what they're
Yeah, no,
talking
I'm not
about.
trying to, I'm not even telling you
Yeah.
these is. I'm just saying we're
Yeah.
talking about the hour worth of free or whatever it was, 2 hours
Yeah,
worth of
yeah,
free
yeah, yeah.
stuff. We're not
Yeah, the
talking
free
about
stuff is different. Yeah.
following through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm not discouraging anybody from going in, creators, right? GunTubers, firearm content creators. I'm not discouraging anybody from checking out folks like, Sean with Think Media and Nick Nimmin and Nate over at Channel Makers and especially Roberto Blake and those types of folks. I'm not discouraging that. I'm just saying that understand that when you go in there, depending on your niche and specifically on this channel and what we're doing, we're talking about firearm content creators for the most part. Just to understand that there's going to be like G is saying, there's going to be a lot of tweaking on that recipe and stuff that's going to be required. It's not the mindless, brainless things that they're saying that some sewing channel with 5 subscribers can go do, right? And grow their channel. It's a totally different situation for us, unfortunately.
No, I think it's fortunate. I mean, that's unfortunate. It sucks that we're being persecuted, but it's easier to be different than it is to be than one of the many, I think,
Yeah,
personally.
unfortunate. Yeah, misspoke. Unfortunate in some aspects. Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Frustrating, that's for sure. But yeah.
Frustrating. Yeah, absolutely. Good word. Yeah.
Okay, so with that being said, again, the show that we're talking about though was focused on things we're bringing up the topic because it was really, being successful no matter your size, right? And financially successful is necessary to do all the other
Yeah.
things. So unless you're independently wealthy and you're listening to this because you're trying to make your hobby better, then right on. Subscribe to both Clover and I's Patreon.
Yeah.
But everybody else that ain't independently wealthy, we got to figure out how to fund the things that we want to do. And very rarely are the things that we want to do just dropping, leaking money all over the place. So not everything costs too much, but I like the message of empowerment, or I don't know if that's the right word. That sounds like weird, but the positive, or the it's not reassuring, but the supportive message that giant channel, because the channel we're talking about is a huge channel that has been a coach for, I guess, years, right? And
Oh yeah.
seen lots of things come and go, and there's things that have stayed consistent, right? So no matter what the fads, like shorts, or you can do video responses or you can't, that no matter what YouTube does to make things weird or whatever, there's certain things that are consistent, and these channels catch on those, I suppose, and use those to, continue longevity or whatever. Anyhow, so their goal was to talk about, being useful as a small channel, or making your small channel useful to you, I suppose I should say.
Yeah.
Um, so some of the bullet points that I put into the robot to give us the fancy stuff at the bottom of the description were working hard and not getting any results. I think that's something that a lot of people deal with. How many
Oh yeah.
subscribers do we need for brand collaboration? To actually, what these are questions that came in that I thought were good, and that's why I
Uh-huh.
figured we'd address some of these questions that came
Yeah. Let's
in.
do
How
it.
many subscribers do we need for brand collaboration to reach out to us instead
Good
of
question.
us reaching out to them?
Mm.
And then how do you grow a channel and make money with it? And then the importance of research. And those are some of my notes, I guess.
Let's hit them. Let's hit on
Yeah.
them. What was the
We also
first
got
one?
a lot of people out there. So I was just saying hey to the people that are out there live. We are doing this live as opposed to a recorded thing so that we can have the interaction. So thanks for joining us. I'll be clicking on people's names as we're going here. And if you got questions, I'll star them so that we can, or points, so that we can address them. But yeah, okay. So working hard and not getting many results.
Hmm.
But I mean, everybody's going to have their point in
Well,
their
that's easy.
process where they are going to hit that point. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's easy. We've heard it no matter what we do. I mean, so maybe people out there that have regular jobs or whatever. You've heard, work smarter, not harder, right? So, hard work in the sense of consistency, in the sense of dedication, and things like that. Sure. Hard work in the sense of just spending hours and hours and hours a day. If you're spending that on the wrong things, then you're in trouble. So, um, what you need to be doing is You need to, and it's hard to work smarter because obviously if you're smarter, you're more educated about something, right? And then so, I commend in a way when we're talking about these gurus and stuff, right? Like I commend the amount of people that are in there that haven't even started a channel yet, in a way, right? In some ways, they're dragging their feet. Done is better than none. But you gotta throw a little respect that way that they're trying to educate themselves so that they can work smarter, not harder. Um, and then of course you've got all variations of different creators and their expertise levels and their discipline levels and everything else. But yeah, that's how
Mm.
you overcome that one.
I think that's like, hey, I want to go fishing. And unless you got grandpa or somebody that's teaching you how to go fishing, then you're like, I want to go fishing. So what are you going to do? You're going to go to a lake. You're going to look around and go, well, it looks like I need a fishing pole and some kind of rope and then something to put on the end of the rope. And then you're going to go to a store and buy whatever basics and you're going to go out there and flounder around until you decide to start asking people or somebody says, hey, why you're sticking that hook in your skin is because you're an idiot. You're going to do this. So,
or hey, there's not, you've got bait for this kind of fish and there's not any of these in this pond.
yeah, exactly. Like you're using the wrong kind of stuff for the wrong kind of fish here.
Right.
But that kind of stuff, you could even just watch other people and kind of get an idea, at least what types of baits to use and not be using maybe you got the wrong color or you're doing something wrong with it. But, I'm just saying you can kind of, and that's, I think, how most people do everything is you decide, oh, yeah, that looks interesting. I'm going to try it. And you're like, because sometimes riding a bike or something, you figure it out, you buy a bike, you ride around. You don't need much more than that. Like, no, you don't need somebody to tell you where to ride your bike or, when to pop a wheelie or whatever. You get your bike after time on the clock. You figure out how to ride your bike real good. I guess I don't even know if this analogy works if people don't ride bikes anymore. But, learning how to ride a car or something, like you need some initial instruction, but then you don't need to be told every time you go somewhere how to get there, right? So I think there's some of that with content creation. You're allowed to just grab a camera, grab your phone and start doing it. Do it all wrong and then figure, okay, instead of doing this in a big mess, I'm going to figure it out. So I guess I was just
and there's benefits to that because it gets you
disagree with
experience, right? On
That's
camera,
exactly.
it gets you
I was
experience
just
with
gonna
your
say.
equipment.
Yeah,
there's
and
positives
I
to
think
that.
there's something to there, but I don't think that's needed. And I don't think that people that plan everything ahead of time are always smarter. They're just sometimes more tentative, what's the word? Scared. So either way, I think it is smart though. Realize that almost everything's been done before, and it definitely is something similar has been done before. So just like you're saying, you can start and do things, just allow things to happen and then learn from your mistakes and figure it out. Or if you don't want to waste all that time, you are allowed to look around and study and see what's up before you jump, right? And that's essentially, I think I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying, I think I'm just adding to that.
Yeah. Number two. What was number two?
Well, so the one was working hard and not getting many results. I was just going to kind of put a line with that or throw down with that that can happen with anything. I always like the treading water. If you're treading water, you're just sitting in one place, you don't know how to float, I guess. So you think you need to somehow swim in order to not drown in the water. But in reality, you can float. In reality, you can just sit there. You're not going anywhere, but you're not going to die. But what you are going to do if you're floating is get rested. You're going to, get ready for a swim or whatever, or some effort. If you're treading water, you're just depleting all your resources and you're not going anywhere and you might be getting a little stronger, hopefully, but you're definitely wasting all your resources getting stronger. So in reality, it's probably better to float for a bit and take a look around, chill, take a rest and look around and then swim in a direction. And you could swim in the wrong direction for a while and then be upset, but you've gotten stronger doing something. At least you figured out how to swim. You figured out strokes that work. You learn stuff about whatever it is that you're doing. Even if you go in the wrong direction, I think that's personally, after my experience, I think that's better than treading water. If you're going to expend energy, do it in a direction. So hard work and not getting many results. Maybe part of this is, especially in the beginning, but even with people that think they got it all figured out, engineer or structure in or schedule in some stops, some places where you stop and evaluate to make sure you're not, you've got your process down and you're running in full steam and this is the perfect scenario, you've never been this well oiled and it's just moving like crazy. And then you figure out, oh, I went in the wrong direction and now I'm someplace I didn't want to be, but I'm super successful here. And now you've got to do something about that. So I think there's something to that angle of it. Is this what I want to throw in there?
Yeah, and goals, right? Goals determine direction. So, and that
Yeah,
goal doesn't have to be
you're
numbers.
allowed to change it, but yeah,
Most
at
new
least have something
creators
to work
set
towards.
that it's monetization, right? It's numbers, it's money numbers, it's subscriber numbers, it's view numbers. Those goals can be how many videos you get out in a week, or you can get filmed in a week, not necessarily published, but filmed in a week, right? Um, how many videos does it take you, before you can do each section of that video without 15 different takes, or, a lot of different things.
Snub is saying, spent 2 weeks watching the gurus before he started his channel. It was definitely helpful, but at the same time, you learn real quick what a lot of what they tell you doesn't work for all niches.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. If you're watching how to drive and they're teaching you how to drive in a
The
car and you want a pickup or a motorcycle, you're going to immediately have to adapt some of that. I get
Yeah.
you.
I think the vast majority of folks that start channels and create in the firearm space that watch the gurus are like snob, and they quickly pick up on that. I think that's one thing. And the reason I say that is because I've been in some of those live chats and some of the other things with and programs and courses and you name it, with hundreds, if not thousands, of other people, and been the only firearm content creator there that I was aware of. There may have been somebody watching that wasn't talking or whatever, right? Um, so I do. I think that most people get that, and that's sad in a way, because obviously, we need help just like everybody else, and advice and direction and other things. But hey, that's why we're here doing this live.
Well, and I don't think it's possible. You can't put something out to all niches because some of the niches are opposite or, you know, anti to each other. Big and small. For example, you can't whatever you do for small doesn't necessarily relate equal and opposite or whatever to
Oh
big.
no, I agree.
Okay, so you have to kind of do general to some extent, but it's also way easier to just do general. It'd be you
Yeah,
don't see them doing, hey, here's the general, and then there's a subsequent dozen
yeah,
niche shows after because
yeah.
we've
I
mastered all
understand
the niches.
why. Yeah, I understand why they do what they do. I'm not saying that I don't understand why. I get it.
So let's see. Okay, so that was snob. So then we'll go to the next one here. How many subscribers do we need for brand collaboration
It's a great
well,
question.
for brands to reach out to us instead of us reaching out to them for
A lot,
collaboration? Is the way it should be.
a lot.
Oh, I don't think so.
Subscribers, not necessarily. I mean, you could go, you could have a video, for example, that does really, really well and have very few subscribers, and then based on that, a company can reach out to you. Depends on the quality of the company as well. You could have a few hundred subscribers, and you're going to start to get, Amazon, low hanging fruit Amazon companies that reach out to you, and accepting some of that stuff. I mean, when you're a growing channel, can help you to further grow the channel. At some point, and this is, I'm speaking from my experience, Jesus is going to be different. We're all different, but from my experience, um, I certainly haven't gotten to the point where companies always reach out to me. So I would say, 10,000 subscribers plus, and the closer you get to 100,000 is probably, and again, there's so many other variables at play with how many views do you get, and how well known are you in the space, despite, because we're much more than just raw numbers. And so that you may think that, oh, well, that company reached out to that person because they've got 150,000 subscribers. Well, no, maybe that company reached out to that person because they just happened across a video that they did, that they really liked that video with a similar product or something like that. That certainly can be the case. But, I think that companies chasing you are more the exception rather than the norm. Um, but that's just my opinion. And so that falls on us to make these shows, to follow up on connections and everything else. And as you build, everything feeds off itself. That's the cool thing, is that as things build,
It
and
can.
there's
It's not
multiple, it
guaranteed.
can, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it can. So, there's multiple ways to look at it. You can sit back and create content and grind and grind and grind to try to get big subscriber, big view numbers. So hopefully companies reach out to you, or you can reach out to a few companies. And then as you reach out to a few companies, those people in those companies talk to other people in companies, and they go, hey, we're working with this person, and they do great content. And then the next thing you know, it has nothing to do with your numbers. It has to do with a word of mouth, a recommendation, something of that nature. What I would advise that you really need to be careful with, and in particular smaller channels, in that, you know, again, 10,000 to 100,000 seems to be a pretty decent bracket. Maybe 500,000, is, you've got to be careful and watch out. And he's had some issues with, networks and marketing networks and things like that. You got to be kind of careful with some of those, because um, sometimes they will see some trajectory, and of course you see opportunity there to work with companies, and it's a really easy way to do it because you're not having to do anything. You literally sign a contract, and then they send stuff, send companies your way, right? They send product your way, they send sponsorships your way. But you've signed a contract. So, just be mindful of that type of thing. It may look like, oh, this is really awesome, and I'm going to do well. And it's like, depending on the fine print, maybe not.
Yeah, I definitely have a different take. So, how many subscribers do you need for the brands to reach out to you instead of you reaching out to them? It's what Clover said isn't wrong, and it's certainly been a majority of the way it's been, and it'll be some extent like that going forward because that's the standard. Most people are going to look at the game and go, okay, the numbers that they give us are view counts and subscriber numbers and numbers of videos and time on the clock. And they start to look around, and that subscriber number looks pretty juicy. And a lot of people hold it up. You get a button when you get subscribers. So, that's one of those things that people are going to focus on. But let me put it this way. If you're selling surgical equipment, do you want to go to the person with 1 million subs or the person with 1,000 doctors? If you're going to sell
Yeah.
some kind of top water lure, do you care about telling a bunch of moms and people who are bickering about politics, or do you want to talk to people who fish in the lake that have the fish that need that top water lure and that haven't found you yet? So a lot of people used to depend on the robot, the big systems, to gatekeep and keep all that information within their analytics and then charge you as a advertiser to reach those people. But in more and more with the various platforms, and how do you say, like, capitalizing on the multiple platforms, you can go to LinkedIn and put out a feeler for doctors. You can say, go to my YouTube channel. So you don't need your YouTube channel to desperately find all doctors and filter it down. You can game these things, or there's a word I'm missing here. You lay them on top of, what am I trying to say? Use them to each other's advantages. There's a word I'm missing here. You guys know what I'm thinking. But, using the multiple platforms, you've got a Substack. So right away, only some people are even reading Substack, but you're using that to manicure the focus of your content. You put it on YouTube so it gets reach and it's easy to find and it's shareable and blah, blah, blah. But people with 37 views on their video over there on YouTube, it's because the transcript of that video is on a blog where 17 of the millionaires read it, and now somebody's bought a Lamborghini because of it. If you're that car salesman, you don't care about, every once in a while you want to put your Lamborghini out on the Super Bowl so people remember what a Lamborghini is, but you don't really care about the masses because the masses aren't buying your Lamborghini. So when you think of it in that realm, holsters, people advocacy, things that are of interest to you, they're a much smaller group. And the overall content creation, part of it is distribution, but part of it is the collaboration and the community building and stuff we'll be talking about also today. And that kind of stuff is, you can either post and pray. I think that's one of the things that they like to say in that one. I like that. Shotgun effect, throw a bunch of stuff out there, see what sticks, throw a bunch of hooks in the water, see what gets bites. Or do you talk to people ahead of time and go, hey, I'm thinking about fishing in this, like, what would you recommend? Who would you recommend I talk to about fishing there? Right. Oh, okay. Thanks for telling me who. And now you go find out from who else would I talk to? You find 3 or 4 people that tell you how they fish that lake. And now you're only bringing lures that the experts have recommended. You're not wasting your time with maybe you're not wasting your time with the wrong stuff. So that's what I'm throwing out there. I think there's, if you think ahead of time, you think, okay, I want to build a device for EMTs that makes it easier for them to remove the pants from victims, so that valuable time isn't lost on a femoral bleed. So, you've created something where a circle cutter instead of a scissors, somehow works better. You're trying to show that to the world. You're trying to sell so many of those that it's cheap for the paramedics, or you just want to get that in front of some paramedics who happen to be experimental or, looking at new tools all the time. They do a regular chat on new tools.
Yeah.
So that's where, think about this in the bigger picture. There's the people that are playing general games, and then there's the people that are playing specific, things. And that's where the number of subscribers you have is it's just a completely variable thing to the situation. So I would say, think ahead of time. You don't have to have thought ahead of time, but think about your project and where you really want to go with it and what your steps are that you need to accomplish that goal. And then you'll find that in almost every case, subscriber count is almost nil. Now, if you're trying to impress Nike or Glock, how many people do Nike and Glock have coming up to them and saying, let's work together? And how many resources do they have to do it that? So they're going to have a threshold of like XYZ, but they're not stupid. If a unique person came up with a small niche, they're not idiots. They've been around the block enough to know that, I can throw a little bit of resources at this micro influencer. And I understand I've been here long enough to know that I can throw, let's put it this way, I can throw $100 at these 3 micro influencers instead of $300 at this massive channel that could care less about my $300, right? This massive engine that doesn't even care about 300 because they are looking at so many 300s that I'm just one of the mix. Or I could put, that 300 at micro influencers who are either creating their audiences now or have fostered specific audiences that are super powerful. And then, you know what I mean? So think of that. Like, you can think ahead of time, like, I want to become one of those important things that people seek me out, or they understand my use, or I'm going to be one of the many seeking the giant. Whatever. Okay, go ahead.
Yep.
I feel like I'm repeating myself. So go ahead.
No, I'm good. I said what I wanted to say on that one.
So we've got people joining in. Thanks for that. Kind of ranting here. So I start a couple of things. It's harder when I'm talking to start things. How come everybody's spelling Fiachi so weird? Roll calls out there. Work the trigger. Welcome. Let's see. Snob says, I talked to a real big million channel for over an hour at an event. And he literally said, don't do what I did. All my subs are kids, and brands see that and don't respect them as much as a smaller channel.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that, is it micro targeting? No, micro, what is it called? I just said it. I can't think of the word.
Micro influencer.
Yeah, that's a thing. And there's definitely people that understand the value of that because they have paid for the experience of the uselessness of the big. In fact, if you look at who advertises with the giant things, it's almost always stuff that can't, that has to just get numbers. It's stuff that no one's going to buy over and over. They're just going to buy it the one time, so they need as many people as possible to buy it.
And there's another dynamic at play too, with larger channels, and you got to realize this yourself as a channel. As you grow over time, let's say you get up to, over the course of 10 years, you get up to 1 million subscribers. Let's use Snob's example or whatever out there. Over the course of 10 years, you get up to 1 million subscribers. How many of those subscribers that you gained in year 1, year 2, year 5 are even still around and watching content? or they've never unsubscribed, right? But they don't watch anymore because your active viewership is like maybe a couple of years old. So,
Well,
I
it
mean,
does,
that's
and
another
there's
thing
no one
too.
that after 10 years is doing the same thing. So if someone
Mm,
subscribed to you in
true.
year one, it's because, wow, YouTube is cool. Look at
Yeah.
this cool new YouTube thing. And this is somebody that's got XYZ and no one else does. But then you've become XYZ times two and XYZ, fancy writing. And then eventually it's kind of a stylized XYZ. And now you're doing music. And every once in a while you'd have XYZ in the lyrics, so that person may or may not have, they might be like, oh, I'm sub to that person because, it's like Pokemon cards. I played them when I was a kid.
Yeah, I
Then I'm gonna
understand
go
that
across the street
there's
and pick up
reasoning.
Pokemon cards.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's not reasoning behind it. I'm just saying that's a thing. Like there's a
No,
difference
I'm agreeing
between
with you. Yeah, they're not gonna
subs
go across the
and
street to watch
active
your video.
audience. Yeah.
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 Um, John Z's out there. Good afternoon. So we got this one. Then Magic had said earlier, I started watching. Oh, I started watching Gurus after already running the channel for some time, having the experience of getting going made the advice more applicable or at least understandable.
Yeah.
I think I get that. Once you played the game for a while, listening to coaches, you get more from that. You
Hmm.
get more understanding.
Right.
And that's I'm not saying I'm just saying stuff. I'm not like scripting this. I'm not practicing this or nothing. So there's probably something to the art of coaching
Yeah.
where you're able to speak to the novice and the experienced, just like the cartoons that can play to a kid and the parents. There's probably some elements to coaching where you're able to really help both intentionally, not just accidentally.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is, so again, I just want to harp on that one, that then how many subscribers do you need for collaboration? If you're going to, I don't know what you would even call that. If you're just going to do stuff and expect people to come to you, you better do some amazing stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of world out there and there's a lot of time and a lot of
Yeah.
other things people could be doing. So if
Yes.
you think that what you're going to do, the dance you're about to do is going to be so awesome that people should be coming to you, then
Hmm.
holy moly, do you have a good impression of what you're about to do? So go
Yeah.
do it. And then if no one comes running to you, realize that they got no reason to unless you've talked to them first. So having something ahead of
Mhm.
time, like a plan, is what I'd recommend. So if you want to if you want to make your channel be the only channel that discovers this and that, and you need 3 or 4 elements to make that happen, then how do you create something that gets you to there instead of just, I'm going to dance around over here and eventually I guess that's going to make what you want happen. And there's nothing wrong with just dancing around, but yeah, preparation and a plan ahead of time is your best way to get collaborations, because I don't think there's too many companies out there that are so affluent that they're just like, you know what, today take some time and find 7 new YouTubers to throw money at. At least I haven't found those companies.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I'm going to read the next one, let Clover chat about it, and then I'll read some of the comments to get back at those. So grow a YouTube channel and make money with it, which I imagine was one of the goals somebody had. And I don't know, I put that in as one of the elements for the robot here, but where do you riff off on that one?
I think that gets into the points that we're going to get into. So I would just say let's put a pin in that one, and
Okay.
once we get
And
into
then,
the points, that's where that's going to come into play.
and then the last one was importance of research. And I think I already harped on that, like, you can just do stuff and then figure out what you got and do something with it, or have an idea of what you want to do and work towards it and at least figure out, oh, I'm doing this wrong. All right, turns out I don't like this, but at least you've got some experience in a direction.
Right.
Let's see the viewers. So I'm going to hit some of these and then we'll dig in. So Chris is saying the viewers' interest in subjects change over time. Yeah, exactly. After 10 years, like, why would somebody be interested? And like you say, very rarely do people think, you know what, I'm going to go in and unsubscribe to channels. I only do that if they're bothering me. Like every once in a while, somebody out of nowhere will decide, I'm going to post 34 videos today and just kill your feed. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And they're all like eating mashed potatoes, like 17 different mashed potato videos or something. Like, you know what? I think I can handle not subscribing to this person anymore because I don't want this to happen again. But even when that happens, I don't necessarily run over to unsubscribe to them. So you'll end up being subscribed to people for a long time, which there's probably something to that. There's probably a way to, take something from that. Work is saying YouTube is a two-part system, maintaining interaction with current audience and expanding your audience base. Stagnation doesn't pay off, especially with brand deals and access. I don't know. Stagnation versus long tail content like Dragon or long green evergreen content. News stagnates, right? Like daily, trendy topics stagnate. But
Right.
if you're posting like how to adjust the hinges on a door, unless something changes with hinges and doors, that's something that your
Major
spin on it,
changes.
your quickness. So I think I hear what you're saying so again, that can be preparation. Hey, do I want to talk about trendy topics that no one gives a shit about 6 weeks from now, let alone 6 years from now? Or do I want to talk about hinges on doors, which is boring,
Well,
but everybody's going to care about that forever?
so there is an opportunity there, I think. And the video that I will have dropping today is one such opportunity. There's an opportunity to combine the two, and that deals with presentation. If there's an opportunity to interject something going on currently with whatever widget that you're working with or whatever in that video, then that presents an opportunity to give that kind of 1-2 combo. You're kind of addressing both. So you've got, now don't get me wrong, the 2A combo or whatever, that punch is not going to have the staying power. So 5 years down the road, you may lose a little retention on that video because of it. I mean, there may be issues and analytics will tell that, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that in the 10 points here. Um, but at least fairly short term, I mean, you're still able to kind of hold the search power, the suggested power, and things like that, because it's I don't know, it's presented around something that has more longevity, right? Is more evergreen. um but yeah, the other thing is when you're talking about trendy or fleeting things, and so like news is definitely one of those. Legislative stuff is definitely one of those. When you're talking about those, um, there is there is some value. Don't discount the value of that 5 years from now or 10 years from now,
Well,
because
no, your value
that
could be
can
to
be an
archive it and
archive,
make it
right?
accessible. But if
That's
you're
where I was
just like,
going.
okay,
That's where I was going, is because it's an archive, right? And so it kind of gives a point of where you've been, where the country's been, where the community's been, that sort of thing, right? So there is some value to yourself and to really entrenched people, to get that perspective from 5 years ago or whatever it might be. However, for the most part, when you're dealing with that trendy stuff, you've got to get it and you've got to get it quick. And the way you get it and you get it quick, and you see a lot with 2A channels that they do this, they use the most effective means of doing that, which is they fearmonger. And then they also um, clickbaity, catchy titles and thumbnails and all of that kind of stuff. Um, there's a reason that you see that. It aggravates a lot of, especially, firearm content creators, gun tubers, other 2A people that are creating content. There are those that approach aggravates, but realize there's a reason that they're doing it, and the reason is they've got to strike while the iron's hot. They got to get it while it's there and get it quick. And news has become something. I mean, we see it with mainstream news organizations seemingly dying off and stuff like that, and the rise of independent journalism and things like that. We see more competition in that space. So not only do you got to strike while the iron's hot and hit it hard and everything else with those types of topics, because they're limited, they're fleeting. You've also got to do it. You've got to do it to try to rise above that competition. And a lot of the reasons and you see a lot of people that get into that space, and they get into that space because they think it's easy. They think it's an easy way to gain notoriety, recognition. I can't tell you the number of firearm review channels, for example, that have become solid 2A now. And they seemingly switched overnight to do it. And are they there because they are legitimately working toward that, or are they there because it's a grift and they're I mean, that's for everybody to make their own decisions, because a lot of them I don't necessarily know personally, but I'm just saying that is a thing. So, and I think that the reason I mention that is because when you're in that, especially the two-way news space, I think you got to be real mindful about your presentation, your approach, and everything else, because there is a certain section of the community, and a fairly large section, honestly, of the community, not of the general public at large, but the community, that pick up on little things and they may label you that way. And that could be detrimental if you're trying to grow. Once you're at a certain level, not so much. But if you're trying to grow, that could, I don't know, that could potentially affect you.
All right, we're 45 minutes in. We talked about doing the live or the coaching sessions once or maybe twice a month, so that we're not every week sitting around for another couple hours talking to everybody. Not that we don't mind, it's just that it's allocating that time. So we'll do that again next week, and then
Yeah.
see, we'll do the, what do you call the cadence or whatever will be, depending on how many people want us to keep doing it and how many people can show up on a Tuesday, I suppose. So that's up to Clover then, how much time you want to spend on this. We're 45 minutes in. We've got 3 or 4 questions, maybe more, coming in now that we could jump into that are live, or we've got the robots 10 points that you alluded to there. Or do you want to try doing both?
Well, what I was gonna say is let's table the uh, private consultation thing, and then let's tack another maybe 30 minutes onto this. So, because it's been a great conversation, and then so that we've got time to go through those 10 points and everything else. So let's do it all if we can.
All right, so I'm going to hit the questions first, since those are more fresh and relevant to what we're
Yeah.
talking about. So essentially, what we're chatting about today is, at what point do being a small channel matter, or is it a hindrance, or is it an advantage? And honestly, it's an advantage in 2023, in my opinion. Know your worth. I always say value your voice, and right now, the value of your voice is higher than it's ever been. And why? Because we haven't really talked about it too much, but Clover kind of alluded to it. Large channels just ruin most everything they touch. They're bad. They're full of useless subscribers that don't do anything except buy t-shirts. So unless you're a t-shirt seller or a hat seller, maybe, or somebody that's selling a useless subscription, you're probably not going to benefit from having a bunch of people who frivolously, running back and forth, as opposed to a small, useful audience that's been essentially manicured, manufactured, whatever it's called, to, like, fostered or whatever, like, small communities of people who have somebody who's creating the live conversation, or the videos that everyone's following. That's they understand that. And the media people, the people that work at these companies, they're not like noobs, like, oh, what's the internet? How does numbers, look at the big numbers. That's what it used to be like. And those people got fired because they suck at their jobs, and they didn't understand the value of a specific 3 specific channels with 1,000 subs versus the channel with 30,000 subs or 300,000 subs. You're selling fancy motorcycles or memberships at a range in Austin, Texas. What do you care what people in North Carolina think is cool on the internet for 3 minutes every Thursday, right? Like, you care about the people that are watching something that matters to Austin, Texas, and you can, again, throw your $100 at 3 audiences that are focused on Austin, and you're going to get way more memberships at your club. You're going to sell way more of your Austin beer or whatever. Well, maybe not beer, but like Austin root beer or something. So that's what we're talking about, is the small channels value in their stuff, and when to, what's it called, to capitalize, when to start to create a financial side to your channel, and when they come to you versus when you're getting to them. Work had asked about or said something about the YouTube being part of maintaining an interaction with the current audience, but then at the same time expanding the audience and not stagnating. And you talked about that applying to brand deals. They uh, what's the word? He went on this to say, I don't mean getting paid as a brand deal, but getting access either to information or items or to the people. And I would call that collaboration more than like a deal, because a deal implies like a contract or something. But certainly some people's ambition with their channel is to be part of the group, right? Or to start to learn more and getting information from the source. So finding the manufacturer, finding the inventor, finding the person that runs the event or something, and learning about the history of, or the operation of. You're not necessarily getting a paycheck, but you're having, or you're able to share to a group of people that are interested what they never bothered to share, or they never could share, or they never thought about sharing. I don't know if you want to throw anything on that.
Nah.
Gizzard says people subscribe for different reasons. A certain point.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
a
for
certain
sure.
number, a certain number of people subscribe for the shorts, others for live streams, for reviews, event content, and
Yep.
such. And then some people because of your mix, right? I think there's a layer where people, they can, then other channels are doing the same thing. There's very few channels that are like, I'm baking chocolate cakes and that's all I do. So
Right.
there's channels that do their mix, and I like some people where it's like, man, I like 3/4 of what you do, but you're never going to see me on that other quarter of what you're doing because I ain't into sports, or I don't care about cinnamon cake or something. So there's definitely that, and some people are going to stick around through the stuff that they could care less about because they're there to support you, or maybe they're open-minded and they're like, I don't know nothing about chocolate cake, but I'm interested in see, I like everything else you do. Let's watch you both make a chocolate cake. And hopefully that's how Second Amendment advocacy works. Because I'm a big advocate of separating 2A, which is what the Second Amendment protects, versus guns, which is just a bunch of stuff that's cool. The people that are out doing their thing, and then, oh yeah, I really like guns. That's awesome. But then there's the people that are like doing their thing, and then they're like, oh yeah, I really think our rights are important and gun owners are marginalized. And let's talk about the end of violence, and how the end of violence isn't brought up by the other side, who just demands bans. So when you can have those kind of conversations casually on a channel about motorcycles, is that the most 2A you can be? Or is that like super, that's like the scalpel of 2A, like that's super effective 2A, compared to just oh, I've got a gun on my counter, oh, I'm working on motorcycles, yeehaw, I like guns too. That's just a gun person. So again, I think there's, well, I don't know, do you want to throw anything on people subscribing for different reasons?
Only that I agree with it.
All right, well, we'll get to these quick then. Unapologetically armed, the new name I'm believing for
Now, that one I'll comment on.
worthwhile. You go on this one then.
Yeah, feel like a misfit. Unapologetically armed. Feel like a misfit, and that it only at this time for channel is using it to get more people engaged into a legislative process beyond sharing hearing testimonies. Got to figure out what else to do. There is enough live feeds across the country that go on. There's enough court proceedings, and I know that that's not legislative, but that's definitely adjacent and can deal with legislation that was passed, right? So, um, you know, look into a little bit of expansion, maybe a little bit of expansion there. But what I would say is that I think the key, and something that you will have to try to hone in on with that, a lot of um, people seemingly, creators channels seemingly doing what you're talking about. And I say seemingly because I don't know if it's effective or how effective or anything else with some of them, but um, I think the key is find a unique, entertaining way in which to work the presentations on that stuff. That could be on-screen graphics. That could be, various other things. That could be, if you've got somebody testifying on a piece of legislation, maybe instead of just throwing up the video of them testifying, there's pause moments where you go, okay, pause. What they're talking about here is going to be restricted in this piece of legislation on line so and so, and it reads blah, 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 right? So you're filling in those testimonies with context. And like I said, I'm just spitballing here. This is your channel and you know how it works and directions you want to go. So just trying to throw out a few things to think about.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. I'm not sure how to read that. So feel like a misfit in that the only goal at this time for the channel is using it to get more people engaged in 2A, well, in the 2A legislative process. So that's a specific part of 2A. So to get more people engaged, the people part, is it people that are already paying attention, or is it getting people's attention to focus on this? So that's two different goals, I think. It's a little easier to engage people that are already 2A on this particular focus. It's just going to be way fewer people. It's going to be way more difficult to reach the larger number of people, but you'll potentially get more of them. It'll be it'll take a lot more effort, of course. But if we're talking the other way, just using it to get more people engaged. So if I'd like to think that might just mean people in Missouri, then like Clover said, having some alternative or multiple, like, if you're going to present some information, you're going to want it on different platforms. So right away, you're going to want an image and a video. Well, if you create an image, a graphic, and a couple of different things right away, or at least have that goal, then having a channel where you bring people, you create a forum or you create a place where people can gather and join a group that creates that stuff together. That could be a way to add stuff to the channel to be useful use of time. And if you build it, they will come, create a place for a community, and then you'll find who's interested and active in the area. People that might have just been watching or didn't even know about you, once you give them a chance to not just have a seat at the table, but bring your tools and your skill sets and help. So your channel could be the hub of the coordination for all the different layers that you could be adding to activism or awareness in Missouri. So like Clover said, you've got those whiteboard videos, you've got PowerPoint type stuff, you've got like the posters or digital posters these days, Instagram graphic type of stuff, infographics, and having people a call out to people who have those skill sets or people that are interested in being creative and learning those skill sets, and you're giving them the data to be creative with a purpose. Creating a place for that could be frustrating, but also, frustrating if they don't show up. But I can't imagine how great, fulfilling that would be once they do. And then it's again effective because you're bringing people together to be creative. And then what'll happen is people see like, oh, these posters are awesome. Who made these posters? This YouTube video was super useful and got people aware of this. Who made that? Oh, it's the same people who made the posters. Oh, and I can be part of it. And then it's got a positive goal there. And then kind of what Clover, I think, said too, is when you're talking about the presentation of the stuff, there's a lot of opportunity there because there's people that either from their occupation or their hobby know how to use editing software, know the techniques to make boring stuff interesting or bland stuff spicy, right? There's people that know how to make mountains out of molehills. That's their job. So letting them know that you need their help either gives them the creative or the technical. It gives they can bring their creative or their technical skills to the group. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, as I was thinking here, that when we're talking about news in general, uh, realize something. Realize that journalism and commentary are two totally separate things. And so as I was thinking about this and the whole goal of I want to bring in more, 2A people, whatever, blah 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 blah, is the play here going to be, okay, I want to talk about this legislation and throw all my personal opinions and beliefs and everything else into this, or do I want to focus on the testimony these people said in relation to the actual legislation that's trying to be done, in relation to court precedents, in relation to what the Constitution says, strictly informative, not this is my opinion and this politician is that submitted this as garbage and blah 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 and all of this personal commentary. And that's what we've seen with mainstream media for so many years, and the ultimate demise, I think, of it is that it's all become commentary. It's not like, hey, this happened and these are the facts that went on and now right? Um, so there's a couple of different ways. I think there's a lot of people doing the commentary side, and so there may be a play if you can keep it more focused in on the actual stuff. Again, utilize the testimonial. That's going to be commentary and personal interjection, right? But you're not saying that as a channel. And then use that. And I'm thinking like, and I'll give you a channel to go check out. Um, it's called Audit the Audit, and this is a company. The guy has to be a lawyer that's doing it, and he takes body cam footage and stuff like that when they audit police officer audits, right, in those channels and different things, and then he breaks it down and he'll pause it and go into court cases and talk about that, and then he'll come back to the video and this, that, and the other, and then at the end, of course, he gives them a score. And I'm not saying do it exactly like him, but that type presentation, I think, in a 2A context could be kind of neat.
That's
And
interesting.
especially and
I watch it.
especially if you keep it, is like I said, especially if you keep it more on the journalism side rather than the commentary. It would be unique at that point.
I've seen that channel. I watch a channel that audits channels that audit channels that audit the police. So I've seen that channel.
Yeah, right. Never ending cycle. Sure.
Oh, I don't like the one that audits the channels that audits the channels that audits the channels. That one's way too pretentious. So then hopefully that answered the question. I think there's definitely some things, if you ever, like say, jump in if you're able on a Tuesday, or let us know. We can chat when you're available. But definitely for DC Project folks, we can mansplain all different kinds of ways to do different or accomplish whatever goals you've got. Snob is saying, as the old saying goes, the easiest way to make a small fortune with YouTube is to start with a big fortune. Yep, buy a boat. Let's see, if you could break even, you're ahead of the game. We know someone who went from making 3-minute videos, the sky is falling, to, from 3-minute videos to sky is falling politics, and blew up. Some of the new 2A channels appear to be after easier to produce content, no range trip, ATF hassles, just sit at a desk and talk. Well, 2A channels can't do anything at a range, because what's there to talk about with Second Amendment at a range, unless you just want a bunch of bonais in the background. But if you're talking gun channels, yeah, for sure. Well, and there's different strategies. Again, we know that a couple of people, when I started YouTube, YouTube was kicked in the balls, and you posted your stuff on YouTube because there was no functionality to post a video on a forum, and everybody was talking on forums. So I could post a video on my website technically, and it would kind of, what did they call that back in the day, when it would take a while to download? It would buffer, it'd like you'd finally get the video after half an hour, because the internet was slow. It wasn't that my website couldn't handle it, it's just the bandwidth was all slow back then. I wasn't going to pay for fast bandwidth. Like, that was an unnecessary fee back in the day, and expensive. So you'd put it on YouTube, because all of a sudden you could put a video up that you could share. And when YouTube started, it was different. So when you come fast forward to 2023, someone approaching YouTube as a new creator, a person who's creating a channel, has a completely different environment than they ever did then. So when these people sat down in I think the one Jeff's talking about is, like, let's say in 18, if it's the one I'm thinking of, or the type of channel I'm thinking of, where they would essentially sit down and go, let's talk about all the different ways you can assemble this chassis into a final product and all the different component parts, that you might choose. And in this case, we're going to choose all these, and here's the links to all of them. They sat down and said, in 2018, what's the fastest way to make money in this niche? Oh, to sell component parts. What's the best way to sell component parts to people that, are interested in DIY or whatever you want to call, just like if you went to a motorcycle in 2023, you're not going to talk about the history of Harley Davidson. That's been done about 1 million times. But if you sat down and said, hey, I'm going to start with this chassis and put all these parts on, and then have affiliate links to all these different parts, and be able to bring all the different people on, and they give you $100 to be able to come on and talk about their parts. And, next week, somebody else pays you $100 to talk about their parts. If you engineer your channel to be that, then of course you're going to build your channel that way. And I think that's why these channels are built this way. Why they just sit in front of a desk and build a gun in front of you, because it's super money. They figured out, like, hey, if I'm going to spend my time making money on YouTube, what's the fastest way to do it in this niche? If we were doing Legos, it'd be the same way, right? We wouldn't just play with Legos. We would open up a box that you can buy on Amazon and entice people to buy the box, I guess.
So 2 things. Number 1, just because it's been done a bunch, and even if you are the one that done it, doesn't mean that you should not revisit things. There is definitely a personal aspect to your video creation and your presentation. I've said it a lot, like, you may think that you're a nobody, but just the sheer odds dealing with all the people on the internet, all the people in the world, there's a certain percentage of people that your particular style and your particular message is the only message that's going to get through to them and make something click, right? We're all a part of a much larger universe, so just understand that. And as G always says, value your voice because of that. Now, you may not reach 1 million people, but you may be the only person to reach the one person that can reach 1 million people or 10 million people, right? So, you kind of get that ball rolling, so to speak. So don't be afraid to do that. It also, it kind of modernizes things. I mean, things can change and evolve over time. So while you see something that's flooded, and oh, maybe you did that video 5, 6, 10 years ago, things have changed. So it's a more updated, a fresher version. It's a lot more modern. It may resonate with younger audiences, so forth and so on. Um, the other thing that I was gonna mention had to do with, you said 2A and what can you do? And I've got to think, what if there's certain things I think you could do having to do with range and live fire and stuff like that. And just an example off the top of my head that came up. What if you took states, and this is assuming that I live in Texas and then we don't have a roster and we can own pretty much whatever. So what if I took the roster from California or Massachusetts or one of the states that has a roster, and or certain bands or whatever it might be, and I took the compliant version or, the roster version and compared that to something virtually identical, right? In a video and said, isn't it sad that, California, this handgun is not on the roster in California, but this one is? I mean, it weighs virtually the same. It looks the same. It functions the same. Right? Like, why? Like, why is this that way? Right? And so pointing out, using range time and firearms to point out some of the silliness with that, will that, you know, people maybe in those states will that light a fire under their rear end in a way to go, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't realize that we couldn't own that thing. And what? That's cool. I want that. Why can't we own that? Oh man, this doesn't make any sense, right? And so I think there's a certain way that you can meld the 2 together. And again, that's dealing with the channel and the want to, and the time and production resources and other things, as Jeff pointed out. I mean, it's a lot easier to sit in front of a desk and just talk about legislation and court battles and other things. Much different when you've got to spend the money to go to the range and the ammo and any other things. But I think that it can be presented in a way that could be beneficial and honestly can be unique in a way.
I'm gonna stop myself from that one. So then Gizzard said, well, 2A doesn't necessarily go along with guns and gear reviews. You can be one or the other or both. Yeah, I think that's a good way to sum it up. It's just like right now, EDC and CCW, everybody's cool with smashing them together. They just mean the same thing now. Pretty soon, CCW will be like your flashlight because nobody cares. Words don't matter anymore. So things will just smush and, big whoop. I'm sure that our grandparents were like, oh, you damn kids and your words, because I'm sure I did the same thing because I thought it was cool to mess with my grandparents' generation with words. So we're just gonna have to deal with that. So 2A is meaning guns. If you like guns, you like, you're 2A now. For a lot of people. I'm not saying that's the way it is. I'm just saying, we're gonna have to whatever, get to change that. That's just you can try to be accurate, clips and magazines. People are like, blah, blah, blah. Let's rag on people who make a difference between clips and magazines. Like it's cool to not care. And then we get mad when they talk about assault weapons. Like, oh no, we have to clarify that. Well, why don't we just clarify everything? Why don't we quit being weird? Why do we allow people to call everything weapons? Like we don't have a problem when every gun is a weapon. Like nothing I have is almost like 6 of my guns are weapons. But cops, the best way I ever heard it was in a CCW class back in the day. Cops, police officers, law enforcement of any type, federal agents for sure, if they ever have to go into court, they would be in dire trouble if they called an ice pick an ice pick. They have to call it a weapon because, they're trained that way. They're never going to call the club, baseball bat, a baseball bat. They're going to say, the perpetrator had the weapon. So guess what? Our firearms are weapons, and they love saying it not because they love it. I shouldn't say it that way. It seems like they love saying it because they've been taught forever to say it, and it's to their best advantage to say it because they're being paid to say it. Like they're being told to be professional, being paid to be professional. We expect them to be that way. So it's just a factor of it. And if we allow everything from, from surplus to be perfect, that we don't do that. We don't use surplus tents. We don't use surplus vehicles like some people do, but most people agree that most surplus stuff is effective, but not preferred. And the same thing with the words and some of the training and stuff. Like, I think we can do ourselves a favor by just calling guns guns again and weapons weapons. A baseball bat used as violently as a weapon, that's what the word's for. But when we go around calling our guns weapons all the time, it's either because you love the idea of scaring people with words, or you're just reckless and you don't realize what we're leaving on the table when we call every gun a weapon. But that's my glitch, I guess.
Yeah, I got broke from that. I never was big into it, and that's part of being a FUD, right? So I never got big into
Because they're
into the
not,
weapon, right? It's
right?
a tool. It's just an object. It's a machine.
Even when you're
Um,
hunting, are you calling it a weapon? Like you're
no,
not being mean, you're not
no,
being violent to a deer. That's ridiculous. It's people that don't ever either
no,
people that are trying to manipulate the conversation or are that stupid or ignorant that
yeah.
they are, inexperienced that they really think you're being violent to a
And
deer.
I had a ton of experience in the years with youth shooting sports with 4-H because you deal with a lot of families, a lot of kids, a lot of walks of life. And, that's one of the things a battle that I constantly had to fight was the weapon terminology. On both sides, I had to try to curb it to help educate people. But then I had to try to curb it to educate people to make other people feel a little more comfortable because obviously we never used firearms in the context of them being weapons in 4-H with kids. Like that never was the case. It was sporting equipment, if anything. And so, it's the saying that I've used a lot. A weapon is only a weapon when it's used as a weapon. So it requires the intentful action, to become a weapon. So up until that point, when we're talking about, firearms, we're talking about firearms. And I don't
That's
even
interesting.
like
If
even
if there was like a firearm fell off a shelf and hit you, like and broke your arm, let's say, right? Is that a
right,
weapon or is that a thing that fell off the wall and
it's
hit
the
you?
thing
Right?
that fell off the wall and hit you. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll be honest, and this is from dealing with again general public, not just people in our program, people and kids in our program, but other ones across the state and even nationally as well. Um, even Now, in the terms of handgun or shotgun, and most of the time we said pistol, even if we were referring to a revolver, but often we would say revolver, pistol, and then rifle, and then shotgun is the only one that you really had to say gun. But saying gun was very generic and very slang. And so we tried to break ourselves from even, and I do a pretty good job of it even today. It's kind of stuck with me from even saying gun, right? Because they don't say firearm violence. They say, they say guns, or so many kids killed by guns and gun violence and gun. So let's get back to clinical terminology, and it's a firearm, but we're talking semantics. Um, and like you said, G, I mean, everybody inside the community knows what you mean, even when you use the clip in the magazine thing, right? Like wherever you come down on that, it's fine. But inside the community is one thing, but then outside looking in, like I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if in the best interest of outreach, right? It's like I think we have to be careful of the words that we choose. I'm not saying that lie or beat around the bush about things, but you can very easily pick the most accurate word for what you're trying to convey. And in the vast majority of cases, weapon ain't even it. I've got three firearms, right, in my EDC rotation, and um, they're not weapons. They've never been used as a weapon. Now, one day I might have to use them as a defensive weapon. That's possible. But at this point, they don't classify as those. They've never been used to attack someone. So there you go.
We went on a tangent, but that's what you get. No extra charge.
Oh, and I
Um,
will say, I have no intentions, right? Like that's the other thing. When we talk about that, and especially in the context of EDC, and a lot of people will call that a weapon, right? Oh, it's my defensive weapon. Well, yeah, but I mean, I hope I never have to use it in that context. You know what I mean? Like, I hope I never have to use a defensive weapon. So,
plus, you
uh,
could also go, you're the weapon, it's a tool.
well, this is true. Yeah, yeah. Because anything, you could literally pick up anything and try to defend yourself with it. Yeah.
You probably should be able to pick up a lot of things and defend yourself if you need to pick up anything. But anyway, let's get off to Defense Dad says, I'm personally getting back into creating content. I've been pretty much on hiatus for a year. Then he followed up with, it's funny though, even being gone for a year, I kept gaining subs. Well, that's good. I mean, I guess unless your content is really bad, hopefully that's the tendency. You put stuff out there and the tags or whatever, and then people recommending it, sharing it, it gets found and people keep subscribing. So that's awesome. Again, if you really wanted that to be the thing, you could always sit down and figure out what's the best way to make some kind of perpetual sub machine, and then build whatever you're going to do for that amount of time that you're going to have to work on it towards that goal. And then when you eventually do have to set it down, or your plan is to set it down, then that could be part of your plan. And there's definitely things you can do to encourage
Yeah.
that, I suppose.
There are people that take
But
off.
I'll put out there again, like we've said it a million times, sub count is interesting, but don't use that as a gauge for anything. Amateurs use sub count, like people that are novices use sub count.
Yeah.
It's just the number that happens to be on there from the old days for some reason, but it's essentially useless for actual what you're doing, and it means nothing for your actual influence in the community.
So it depends on the content. It depends on a lot of different things, right? But to this point, take first of all, I think everybody needs to schedule work in, take breaks, right? Um, because you want to stay fresh. You don't want burnout to happen. Those sorts of things. Um, but there are channels out there that are um, perpetually making money off of content, and they haven't made a new video in 2 or 3 years or 5 years. Like, why? Because they were making like evergreen, informational, educational style content, and they literally covered everything in that subject or whatever they could possibly cover within reason, right? There's not really, if you're talking about history or things like that, really, there's not really anything new going on. And so they'll do. There's a bunch of channels like this. They'll start a channel. They'll work it for a couple of years. They'll get a couple of hundred videos out. They'll cover pretty much everything in that little sector of the niche, right? And then they move on to another channel. And that channel just sits there and constantly gets views and stuff because it's still relevant. There's still people looking for that information 5 years later. Um, so, I use that example, not to say go try to start one of those channels. If you want to, that's cool. But um, to say that, don't be afraid of taking breaks. Like it's understandable.
Since you just put it up there, Defense Dad responded with basically I got burned out, tired of making the same old video with a different product, but those tend to be the ones that get the most views. Well,
Announced for mention, you've
boobs.
got to address burnout before you burn out. So
I guess, or just realistic expectations. If you want
Yeah.
views, boobs get views. Free beer gets views. So if you're chasing views, then do it in a way that makes it interesting to you, or don't chase views. Right? You can do other things. You can do what you want to do. And again, I'm going to say, I think it's not 100% all the time, but in general, people that do what they want to do and find 13 people that dig it are having as much fun as anybody else who's desperately seeking the trend, getting their finger on the trend, which is almost always after somebody else did it in a big channel, and you're collecting the, oh yeah, that was cool type of stuff. And that can be interesting and fun, but it's just
So
different than doing what you want and being happy with the people that find you. And every once in a while, something like a collaboration or a strategic reach out can be more fulfilling and more useful for a channel that's on a niche or whatever we want to say, like doing their own thing, than trying to appeal to the masses when you don't care about the masses, honestly. Like that's not your passion. So the reviews and stuff can get views. If you're doing reviews and they bring in money or subscribers, and the subscribers are a thing, then okay, then realize that you're doing that as a chore. But do your chores in batches. Do it so that you're getting it out of the way once every quarter, and they're done, and then go back to doing what you want to have fun with your channel. So I guess that's what Clover said. You can address that burnout by kind of strategizing it ahead of time, knowing what you need to do and
we're just
what
taking
you
a
want to
break.
do.
Take a week here and there. Take a week. Take a few days. I pretty much my weekends are my weekends. Like occasionally I'll film, as far as YouTube goes anyway. Occasionally I'll film some content, but it's or I'll do some research, or maybe like something like that. But for the most part, no. I mean, and that helps with burnout. A couple of things though with Defense Dad, a couple of things that came to mind with that, talking about what did he say? He's like the same old videos, but with a different product. But I'm talking about the ones that get the most views. So Ghost was out there earlier. I don't know if he still is. Snob was out there earlier. Don't know if he still is. Don't know G-Web's opinion, but he can jump in on this when I get done too.
I
But
believe I'm asking you to
any
say we're both out there. Yeah.
and Jeff is out there too with Gear Report. So all of these probably can echo exactly what I'm about to say. Is the videos that I produce, that I put the most time and effort in, and I polish them up, and I'm like, oh man, this is gonna rock. This is amazing. This is awesome. Seldom flop compared to I literally put a little bit of thought in it. I kind of knew my topic. I went out, I turned on the camera, and I filmed. And it's like the latter blows the other one away. And that's a common thing. And it annoys the absolute crap out of you. So I get it. Um, the what you need to do is, you need a little bit of variety. Doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over, um, there is a certain strategy to that. And we talked earlier in the podcast about, the creator gurus and a lot of their tips and other things. And that's one of them, is stick with what works type thing. But you're like, hey, I need a break. I want to do something different, whatever. Well, realize something else we've talked about earlier in the podcast is you have different types of audience, right? your audience is not just your audience. You've got a core loyal audience. You've got a fleeting audience. You've got, these people that are interested in certain things on your channel. Your audience is diverse. So don't look at it in the sense of, oh, if I do this, I'm going to lose. It's not going to get as many views. Look at it in the sense of, I'm going to do this and my loyal followers will appreciate this and enjoy it along with me. Or I'm going to do this and, whichever section of your audience, right? Oh, those folks, I know those folks will appreciate it, right? So instead of the big net catch all, right? And break it up. If if you've got a certain product or a certain method or a certain way that you do things, do that for 2 or 3 videos and then have your little moment over here for the loyal audience or the core people, right? And then do a few and then hit on another little specific part of your audience, right? Do a video for that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And then there's ways too, if you're talking about, certain products that get you, um, exposure and certain products that seem to be more popular and get you more views or subs or whatever. Um, find interesting ways to work those into projects and videos that you're excited about and you want to do, right? If you do really well with a certain, let's just say you do really well with your med kit or your range bag or your EDC knife, right? Incorporate that into other things. Like you don't have to do anything talking about, you know, the knives that get you the most views. Just use those knives. Use one of those and this is pulling from G Webs because he does this all the time. But use knives in an unboxing video and just fleetingly mention, hey, let's do the unboxing and today I'm going to use my whatever knife and flip it open and you've got to mention and it's there. And you can throw that into the metadata. You can throw that knife or whatever it is into the tags. So there's definitely ways that uh, you can incorporate that and make it work a little better for you and maybe not get burnt out as quickly. But again, I go back to heading burnout off at the pass is important. So, sit down and go, hey, 2 weekends from now, we're going on a camping trip, or 3 weekends from now, I'm going to invite the family over. We're going to have a barbecue. You know, we're going to hang out, and I'm not putting out videos. I'm not dealing with it, and step away from it for a little bit. Nothing wrong with that.
So there's flaws with the big coaches because we have situations with policy and with society marginalizing us as gun owners all the time, or attempting to at least, and us having to defend things that we shouldn't have to. So, so we have some issues that the big people who offer coaching or advice and stuff like don't really always apply to us. So, but at the same time, big one is Roberto Blake, right?
Yeah, he's
That
probably my favorite.
yeah, mine too.
Loosely,
Of,
but favorite.
of
Yeah.
people who I've seen shows from other people who I've liked, but Roberto has the consistently
Right.
offers good advice that is open enough and real enough that you can
Yes.
listen to it and apply it to
And
whatever. It's not,
specific enough.
it's
Yeah.
real. It's not just
Yeah.
like, oh, vague, like, oh, we can make you better by being, you could be better and then you'll be better. Like, no shit. So, anyway, one of his things is you can do what you want and be really creative and do exactly what you want, but unless that happens to coordinate with what everybody else wants, have realistic expectations. So if everybody's wanting soup and you're over here baking cakes, what do you think everybody's going to stop wanting soup just because you're baking cakes? Like that's not realistic. So you either going to figure out soup or try to cram cake soup, which I don't think is what Clover was saying, but you can try to figure out some way to hybridize it, or just be satisfied with the people that there's fewer people that like the cake and they're going to show up and try to get a realistic number of how many people really like cake, and then figure out if you're reaching that number, how many of those people. But the futility of worrying about all the people that want soup when you want to talk about cake, you got to get over that. That's what I'm trying to illustrate. It's
What
like
if you
just have realistic expectations and deal with it. Like, so what if you're not going to reach everybody on YouTube? The only people that do that name a channel that reaches the most people on YouTube. 6 months from now, see if they still exist. Like that doesn't, no one stays in that spot for very long. Those are peaks that happen, and they happen based on circumstances and, you know, a bunch of things happening, and then poof, a new channel, huge, and it lasts for a little while. And the most engineered ones last for a bit, but they peak out, you know, they drop down, and then something else hits them. And, you know, I'm trying to say, like, what people are attempting to go for doesn't even exist. So I'm gonna repeat myself.
Well, first of all, I'm offended at cake. I prefer pie. But
That's messed up.
with that analogy, you know, could you not have a situation to where you said this cake pairs as a great dessert with this soup,
Oh yeah,
you know,
definitely. That's being creative.
or vice versa, right? And that's what I was getting at, is there's subtle ways you can interject things that seemingly don't belong together.
Oh yeah, I hear you, and that's all I'm saying is just realize that there are differences. So that's what Roberto's always saying is, like, if you want to do your thing, go do your thing. Just don't expect everybody in the world to care that you're doing your thing. If you want to do stuff in
Right.
front of everybody, go do whatever they're looking at today.
Mhm.
Because realize it ain't going to be the same always, except for like, hey, let's all eat breakfast. I'm pretty sure everybody likes eating breakfast for a long time, but what they eat for breakfast ain't going to be the same, right? So, you know, the best you can do is like do a breakfast dance and try to get as many people on board with that. But unless you're
Yeah.
doing what people want, then don't expect everybody on the planet to give a crap about what you're doing. And I guess I'm just adding to that. That's a that's a very precarious place to be. So it's difficult to obtain, and it's even harder to stay. So it's a weird goal to reach for when you think about the goals you could choose. Just because it's so difficult. So a couple of comments on the cake things, because they're saying that goes along with what I was saying earlier about subscribing. People subscribing for different reasons. Feed them all, make short contents, some reviews, live streams. And it's something with scale. And I don't get to talk about this too much because everybody's sitting around not getting huge. But back in the day, everyone was getting large. It probably was more possible, I guess, back in the day with fewer channels, or more people were on YouTube or something. But back in the day, there was a lot of growth, and people would go from, you know, zero, I guess, to, you know, very large channels. And somewhere in there, they all had learning curves or, you know, plateaus or something. You'd reach different levels, and people that were, again, watching people that came before them or kind of knew about it from other realms or something. Some people were able to surf that better than others. But for the most part, that was one of the things that would mess with people. So you can have 12 core subscribers, supporters, people that hang out with you, and you can know everything about those 12 people and care about their kids and know about what's going on in their lives and stuff. Now let's take that to like 24 or 120. That's unrealistic. You can know 120 people vaguely. Let's take that to 1,000. Now let's take that to 10,000. All right, well, and now let's take it to 100,000. 1% of 100,000 people are complete assholes. How many complete assholes do you have with 100,000 subscribers that bother you constantly because they hate you? That's what I'm saying. Like, you realize that's a thing with 100,000 subscribers. If 1/2 of 1% hate you so much that they're gonna constantly throw shit in your way, constantly wing eggs at your windshield as you're driving by, what's that like? And you started out having 12 people that you hung out with, and you want to have that with 100,000 people. That's not realistic. So if you go into it going, can't wait till I'm the Pope behind the bulletproof glass, and that's my goal, and I'm doing everything to get to there, then you're going to be comfortable up there. But if you're the guy who likes driving with your window down, chatting and slowly, you know, going by and talking to everybody about their gardens, you can't do that with 100,000 people. You can't do that with 10,000 people really effectively. And you certainly can't do it in between. So that's one of those things where I guess I'm getting at that, using that to illustrate that if you're going to put out information about a shotgun, and then tomorrow you're going to put out information about revolvers, and then the next day you're going to put out information about advocacy in Missouri, you don't have to tie those together. Clover kind of talked about it before, and I don't want to jump in on it, but you're allowed to compartmentalize and have in the same channel whatever you want. Now realize it's going to be detrimental for some analytical things where the channel trying to get a niche and the system is going to glitch. So it's never going to be a huge channel. But again, we already talked about, hopefully we're getting through to people. Large channel is a amateur, like novice thing. Like that's nothing. Huge channels on huge podcasts have almost nothing on YouTube. You've seen that all the time and you understand it. So just realize you can engineer that.
Yeah.
So if you realize that you can do 3 things, like, or I should say, if you're capable of doing 3 things, fine. If you decide not to do it on 3 channels, go nuts. Like if your ambition isn't to have a huge YouTube channel, then don't worry about those strategies. But that can be super powerful, I guess. And yeah, you can be really powerful. Just you don't have to mix the things. And I guess I was going to say, if you're back to that soup and cake, you don't have to mix them. You definitely don't want to mix them most of the time. Now, every once in a while, you can figure out a way to throw some cornbread into some soup, and that's probably pretty good. But not every soup wants cornbread. Not everybody's looking for that for every meal. So, just because you can do it doesn't mean that's what everybody's going to go to a soup and cornbread diet. So just throwing those kind of concepts out there.
So, in the context of this, something that I say often and I need to bring up is YouTube is hard. But sometimes we get discouraged because we may realize it's hard, but it doesn't seem hard for others, right? So keep something in mind. YouTube is an ecosystem, many, many moving parts and pieces, and all types of things can affect algorithms and what's trending and what becomes popular and who rises and who falls and all sorts of things, right? Um, it was hard pre-pandemic and lockdown. YouTube became a lot easier, and we've seen a lot of channels come on board across the board during the pandemic and lockdown. Now those channels are starting to figure out what those of us that were around before know, which is YouTube is hard. And so while we can get discouraged, and I know that I've had several people echo this sentiment, we get discouraged because those channels hit during the pandemic and blew up. Um, as G points out, like, what's the longevity of those channels going to be now that it's back to the routine grind and YouTube being hard, right? Um, so just keep in mind that things change, um, but you've got to roll with it, um, and don't don't define yourself by numbers. Don't define yourself by those raw analytical numbers, and then don't compare yourself even to other channels in your niche doing the exact same things maybe you're doing. Like, don't draw those comparisons. Like, you cannot do that. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, we're not in a race with like equal competitors around a track. We are some opposite of that. Like everybody's just doing their own thing, and
Yeah.
you don't have to. Every once in a while, people jump on a track just to compare themselves, the analytics or something. But it really doesn't matter if Anyway, so we're about wrapping it up. We'll blow off the robot stuff, even though
Poor
in the future,
robot.
the overlords will be mad about this. They'll realize that humans are selfish and we care about what each other are saying
Right.
more than them. But we had a poll going. What is your favorite part of content creating? I don't know if Clover's seen the poll. Did you look at any of the results?
I didn't have it up. Let's
All
see.
right, so don't look at it. Don't look at it. No, don't look at it. Your favorite part of content creating, the options were the community involvement, the audience interactions, the challenges of the game, or the content creation itself. Which do you think people chose? Your favorite part, not the most important, not their
favorite
part that you're struggling with. What's your favorite part?
I would hope, and I would choose the same one, the community involvement.
It's changing right now. So the community involvement has 0%.
Whoa.
The audience interactions has 20%. It just updated, so somebody added audience interactions, which is similar but not quite. And then challenges of the game, which means just the puzzle or the business of it, and then content creation at 47%. So content creation, and that's kind of goes along with what Roberto, I think, is trying to get across, because he brings it up. This is like the 4th time he's brought it up, right? You can go make whatever art you want, and your mom's gonna like it, and you're gonna like it, but your grandparents will like it probably. But your grandparents might tell you, like, that's ugly, because they love you, but they also want you to know that that's ugly.
Right.
But that doesn't mean anybody else is going to like it. Now, if you're huge and you put some ugly thing down, of course, people that are going to want to try to, get up next to you are going to say that they love your ugly art. But for the
Right.
most part, if you're just doing your thing, most people are not interested. So the content creation, I'm down. I mean, I do ugly junk all the time. However, have realistic expectations and don't be frustrated when your stuff, your personal, private interests don't correlate. Unless they happen to correlate, then you get the fun times. But that's something that can be engineered. Again, realize that sometimes you want to eat something that's got fiber in it, and you eat that so you can eat cake later, and then or you could chop up some stuff into your pie, I guess, and try to choke it down that way. I did want to hit one other one. I thought that maybe I unclicked it from. I'm gonna keep calling you Worthwhile Fun because you changed your name on me. But by Misfit, I just meant I've never cared about how many subs are making money so far. Anyway, well, you got to change that. It's not impossible to make money on the internet, and it's not impossible to make money on the line. So there's ways that you can do that today. There's ways that you can build your thing to do that. There's hopefully ways that will influence the community the same way that we did with cameras, going to SHOT Show and taking still pictures and changing that to video, eventually to live streams and our phones and selfies and stuff. The industry didn't say, hell yeah, selfies. They're just adapted to it. So the same way I think we can adapt, the Midway will take a couple of bucks and throw it to the NRA. How tone deaf is that? Let's take that same concept to everybody in the industry and think about how powerful an infrastructure a capitalist society can come up with once we start to apply that. Too bad we don't have a national level organization with that in mind, but maybe we can create one at some point. So I'm going to end the poll. Say thanks to Clover for joining us. Thanks to Unapologetically Armed for all the advocacy work you do for real. Thanks to everybody else for joining us and leaving questions out here. And I'm not dissing anybody else. I just know that she does a lot of actual work and she shares it with everybody. So thanks for being out there. Thanks to She Fires, who was the only person that purchased stuff from the store and literally kept me in business over the weekend. So thank you very much to She Fires. She'll be getting so much stuff that hopefully it makes it up to her for her generosity. And same with the people that helped me get the sewing machine. It's appreciate your patience. I'm not doing well financially, so I'm attempting to get the stuff out to you as soon as I can. Hopefully that'll be changing in the future. But Clover, you got anything coming up?
No, not really.
Right on. So thanks everybody for joining us. We'll be back on Tuesday, and we'll also be back on Saturday, I guess, to chat with Tony on the Ask Gun Question show. Oh, you know what? Before we end this, let me jump over to here and see if Cape Gunworks has their show starting yet. And I don't see the Grace Curley show posted yet. So talk about Ghost. What has he got coming up tonight? He keeps changing the thumbnail.
Tonight, yeah, I think he was gonna be
Best
talking about,
Vietnam era rifle and PCCs.
I guess, I don't know. It was PCCs last time I looked, but
Well, it says PCCs and the best Vietnam era rifle. I feel like that's just like a weird bananas and straw. I don't know. That's I guess a good one. But that's a weird mix to put together.
right.
He added here, this may sound bad, but most, not all, say that they don't care about making money aren't making money yet. Once you start that wave, it's definitely a goal.
True. That's true. This is true.
Yeah, we're capitalists, and
Once
not
I would
everybody
say,
is worth money, let's say. But the thing is, there's people out there that don't care. There's people out there that are throwing money around, and there is money. So you're worth more than some dingus who's just dangling around and collecting a bunch of money that's being thrown around. So if you're just aware that there's ways that you can put out a pocket or something and try it and see if you like it, and then if your project is paying for itself, see if you want to be more ambitious with that in a capitalist.
I would say once you have, opened up enough to understand just how much money is out there, would be, so not even that you start making money, because I've made money here and there for years, but decided that 2023 was going to be the year I was going to kind of focus in on that a little bit. And there was a lot of creators out there in our circles that kind of felt the same way and moved the same direction, because we seen the potential with the amount of of revenue streams that are just out there, right? Um, and so yeah, it's I would go more that route. Like, once you realize exactly how much you may already be making a little bit of money, but then once you realize the how much is out there and on the table and piled up, you're like, holy crap, I need to go get some of that.
All right. Well, I was trying to type to John. I was just to say same here. I was going to type same here, and we'll meet up at the castle whenever one of us wins the lottery. But hoping for winning the lottery is lame, so I'd rather get out there and get at it. So Clover's already late for what he's trying to do. We'll thank everybody for joining us. Cape Gunworks is live here in a bit. I don't see them live, or they haven't posted their show yet, but each Tuesday, Toby from Cape Gunworks will join Grace Curley on a radio show out of Boston, where they spend 45 minutes doing a 2A Tuesday segment, kind of a rapid fire. People call in and ask either technical or legal questions about guns, and then Toby answers them. Toby listens to the live chat as it's happening, and then sometimes they'll spend some time afterwards. So it turns out to be a pretty fun 2A focused and gun related conversation. Toby does a great job of hosting the live YouTube and radio show at the same time. So normally I would link right to it. So it sends you over there. They just haven't posted it yet. So whenever that posts, we'll link it on our main channel. Otherwise, Ghost has a show tonight. I don't see anybody else in the list, but what's today? I guess Night Strike stopped doing his.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's not 2A anymore.
Well, I'll have the video drop later, so I'll be looking for that.
Right on. Yeah, so pay attention. People are doing stuff. We'll be back next week. Yeah, it's easier when you